it's Sherry with Educate RD, and welcome to today's episode of Tell Me About with our topic sprouted greens. So, right now the verdict isn't out yet on whether or not they're going to be a quick fad or a lasting trend, but I think our culture is moving towards minimally processed foods, trying to get back to what's natural, and so sprouted greens are coming up a lot in conversation. Whether you're curious about them, heard something from a client, or you've never heard of them, hopefully today I'll give you a nice overview of what they are, some of the benefits, some of the considerations that might make them not a good option, and what you can kind of do with them and how to make them, those sorts of things. So let's get started. So what are sprouted greens? Well, sprouted greens are whole grains, meaning that they have all three layers still intact, which is the bran, the endosperm, and then the germ. In the refining process to make products with white flour, you're removing the bran and the germ layers and leaving behind the endosperm. So that's why we say that whole wheat flour is a lot better for you, because it still contains the nutrients that bran and the germ layer will have. So you need all three of these layers for the whole grain to become a sprouted grain. You soak that whole grain in water, and over time a sprout will form off of it. So that's where the sprouted part comes from, and we'll talk about why that's important and why it's good for you. But a fun fact is, historically, this would just happen to grains. Whether it was poor storage conditions, people just didn't realize the whole grains would accidentally get wet, and they'd start to see sprouts grow off of them. And with our modern technologies and just better storage conditions, we've kind of prevented that from happening, thinking that it's something that shouldn't happen to the grains. So that's kind of where that shift happened. So what are the benefits of sprouted grains? A broad look at the research will tell us that they're higher in B vitamins, vitamin C, fiber. One study showed it was 3 to 4 times more folate available, and more antioxidants. Besides just having a good nutrient profile, there's more bioavailability of nutrients, so our body's more able to use them in sprouted grains. One study with sprouted millet showed that iron was 300 times more bioaccessible to the body. So, for instance, if someone's a vegetarian, not eating animal meat, which has really accessible iron in it, and vegetarians tend to be more at risk for an iron deficiency because of this, suggesting them to eat sprouted grains would be a great option because the iron is much more available. So that's somewhere that sprouted grains can really help. So we know they have these benefits, but how going from the whole grain to sprouted grain does it really create these better benefits? Well, it has to do with something called phytic acid. So phytic acid naturally occurs in these grains, and it's kind of like a compound that's a storage unit for phosphorus. And when it's ingested as phytic acid, the phosphorus is not bioavailable. So one, you're not getting the phosphorus from that molecule because it stays intact as this compound, and it's also going to chelate, fancy word for kind of grab onto other minerals. So you're talking about zinc, iron, calcium, magnesium, big players here that we need. So it's going to chelate and form this compound called a phytate, and therefore it's a double whammy. You're not getting the phosphorus, which our body needs a lot, and you're also not getting the minerals that you had because it's picking them up. So that's a big issue, and that's in your grains that aren't sprouted. But there's some phytase, an enzyme that will break that down in the same sources that have phytic acid. However, in wheats and rye, the phytase is not nearly enough, so it can't counteract that effect. So when we sprout grains, we are creating an environment that creates more phytase, and breaking down that phytic acid, so the phosphorus is available and we're not losing these nutrients. So that's one thing that sprouting can do. It can neutralize the phytic acid that's making it difficult. I also want to comment on phytates, because I know some people might say phytates aren't terrible for us. They're in a lot of things, you know, they're not so terrible, but it's the low levels that aren't that bad for us. Like they are in a lot of vegetables that we consume on a day-to-day basis and in other foods, but it's when they reach higher levels then that becomes a problem. Those compounds, like I said, we're going to see those mineral deficiencies. So in wheat and rye, it's been found that the level is extremely high. So that's why this process is such a great benefit. And we know this because culturally and historically, like other cultures are doing this, still doing this. If you just look to other cultures, I know India and China, a lot of Asian countries are really still using this process, and it's just because we've become very industrialized and commercialized that we've kind of done away with it. So it's definitely not popular over here, but it's kind of going back to our roots and what was always done. So that's just my comment about phytates, in case someone has a question about that. Also, I'll just make a quick note that souring is another process that I didn't really talk about today that can have even greater benefits. It's thought to be an even better process, but it's kind of like we're sticking with the sprouted grain topic today and what that trend is, because that's its own thing. So just to throw those notes in. Are there any downsides to sprouting? Well, at this time, the phrase sprouted grain is not regulated. It's kind of how like GMO hasn't really become like a regulated thing. Some states are choosing. Different topic. But it's not regulated. So for how long they're soaking, at what temperatures, what conditions, you can't be sure from product to product. It can just vary. So nutrient claims that they find from research might not be consistent across the board, but I think, you know, it's a safe bet that they're going to be more beneficial. To what degree, that's at your own risk, but just know that maybe choosing sprouted grains is already a step in the right direction, so it can't really harm you, I don't think. Not making any claims, but just kind of talking about the research. So where to buy them? Ezekiel bread is a really popular brand that has sprouted grains, and a lot more are popping up now that it's being more talked about. It's getting more attention, though there isn't a ton of research because it's still not very well known, but like I kind of said, culturally and historically it's been done, so it kind of seems silly to question that it could be anything crazy to do. So you can get anything from like tortillas, breads, and muffins. That's kind of like there's a dry process and a wet process for turning sprouted grains into a product. Wet to make like a mashed puree that they can form, and then dry is when they can dry it out like a flour to then be used. Either one. You can also make them at home. I'm going to list a recipe in the description that can show you how to do that. It's kind of pretty simple, and like I said, there's all these benefits that sprouted grains can provide for you. So we talked about what sprouted grains are, what their potential benefits are from the research that's out there, what are some considerations, things to keep in mind, and what kind of products there are, where you can kind of find them. Like I said, more popping up, so I think it's going to be, personal opinion, I think it's going to become a trend versus a transient fad, but we'll see. I'm a fan, so it's already trending in my life. So if you guys like the video, you can just like it down below, subscribe, and comment if I didn't go into anything as in depth as you like. If you still have questions, I like to talk about the biochemistry, but I know not everybody does, so I try to skim the surface with that. And comment with any suggestions about videos that you'd like to see me make on whatever topics. Thanks for seeing me.